Okay, so let's talk about something that I guarantee we have all run into. It's that moment in a co-op game where one person kind of takes over. Today, we're using the fantastic game For the King to break down exactly why that happens and what smart game design can actually do about it.
You know, everything we're about to discuss really comes back to this one simple line from a conversation between two game designers. One just says, "This is actually the first game we've played together." And that's it, right there. That's the core. These games are all about connection, about a shared adventure, which of course makes it so much more frustrating when that whole dynamic just falls apart.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First up, a quick look at what For the King even is. Then we'll get into how you build your party, because that's where the seeds of trouble are planted. From there, we'll define this thing called the alpha player problem. Then, the fun part, how designers can actually fight it. And finally, we'll see what the sequel can teach us about all of this. This isn't a review, folks. This is a full-on design deep dive.
All right, let's get into it. Section 1. So what exactly is For the King?
Well, at its core, it's a co-op, turn-based strategic RPG. The best way to think about it is like a digital board game, you know? Like Dungeons & Dragons on your screen. You and your buddies team up, you explore this world that changes every time you play, you fight monsters, and you do it all one turn at a time, where every single move really counts.
And let's be super clear here. Even though we're about to pick apart a big problem with it, this game is awesome. The designers we're pulling from absolutely loved it. It's got this incredible charm, you can play it over and over, and it's genuinely hard, in a good way. It's just a great game that happens to be the perfect specimen for this very common problem.
So where does this whole thing kick off? It starts with the very first big choice you have to make, building your party. This one decision basically sets the stage for everything else.
The game is built for 3 players, and you see that number, and you gotta wonder, why 3? Why not the classic 4 you see in D&D? Well, the argument is that this was a really smart move to make the game more accessible. Because, let's face it, finding 2 friends who are free is a whole lot easier than trying to wrangle 3.
And come on, we've all been there. Organizing a game night is a nightmare. Schedules never line up, or maybe your friends just aren't into this kind of game, or they've already played it a ton. By sticking with 3 players, the developers made it just that much more likely that you'd actually get to play the game the way it was meant to be played, with your friends.
Now, beyond who you're playing with, there's the whole matter of how you get stronger. And in For the King, it's way more about the gear you find than your base stats. This makes getting new loot feel amazing. But here's the twist. When you finish a campaign, you don't actually unlock new items. No, you unlock the chance for those items to maybe show up in your next game. It can be a huge thrill, but man, is it frustrating when you spend hours playing and that awesome sword you unlock just never ever appears.
And all this tension, the loot, the progression, it leads us directly to the main event, the big challenge we're here to discuss, known in game design circles as the alpha player.
So what is an alpha player? It's that one person in the group, maybe they've played the most or they're just more naturally assertive, who starts calling all the shots, for everybody. They aren't just taking their turn, they're playing the entire game and everyone else is just kind of following instructions. It turns a fun co-op night into a solo game with a few extra button pushers.
This breakdown right here shows you exactly why this happens. When you play by yourself, you've got total freedom. You can mess around, you can play a weird, inefficient character, you can take your sweet time. But the second you play co-op, a new pressure appears, efficiency. Suddenly, you have to respect other people's time.
And that is the absolute key. Cooperation requires efficiency. Why? Because none of us want to waste the very limited time we have to play together. We want to make progress, we want to beat the game. And this natural drive for efficiency is the perfect breeding ground for an alpha player to emerge. When someone points out a better move, we usually just go along with it. Because hey, it's the fastest way forward, right? And what pours gasoline on this fire is that in a game like For the King, everybody has perfect information. I can see your entire character sheet, all your gear, all your abilities, everything. And with all that data, it becomes totally possible for one person to just look at the whole board and calculate the so-called best move for the entire team.
So if that's the problem, what's the fix? How can a game be designed to stop this from happening? Well, let's take a peek inside the designer's toolkit.
This is the big question, right? How can game designers actively fight back against the alpha player and make sure that everyone at the table is actually having their own fun and making their own choices?
It turns out there are some really powerful tools. You can add randomness. You can create choices where there's no obvious right answer. You can throw in a time limit, encourage role-playing, and, this is a big one, you can hide information. Each one of these is a direct attack on the alpha player's perfect plan.
Randomness? Man, it is the alpha player's kryptonite. In For the King, almost every single action involves a roll of the dice. So even if the alpha player comes up with a mathematically perfect strategy, one bad roll can send the whole thing up in smoke. And that's so important because it means no plan is ever truly foolproof. It gives me, the player, a real reason to say, yeah, that's a good plan, but I'm feeling lucky. I'm going to try my thing. My choice matters again.
Time limits are another fantastic tool, and For the King does this in a really clever way. It's not some loud, annoying ticking clock in the corner. Instead, there's this thing called the chaos meter. Every round that goes by, it creeps up, bringing a little more doom to the world. It creates this constant background pressure that forces the group to take risks and make interesting choices now instead of spending 20 minutes debating the absolute most optimal, boring move.
And to really see how critical these design ideas are, we just have to look at what happens when a game forgets them. It's time to talk about the King's flawed legacy, the sequel.
The designers in our source material, let's just say they were not fans of For the King 2. And this table shows you exactly why. The first game had this one long, epic campaign where you felt your progress every step of the way. The sequel? It chopped everything into these little chapters and then wiped your progress clean after each one. The simple, heroic quest got replaced by annoying characters and missions that just felt like chores. That sense of freedom and discovery, gone.
So at the end of the day, the sequel it lost the magic. It lost that incredible feeling of starting weak and growing into this absolute powerhouse over one long adventure. It lost the charm, the funny little details, the things that made the world feel alive. It basically kept the mechanics, but threw out the soul.
All right, let's land the plane. What are the big takeaways here? First, co-op games are this constant tightrope walk between group efficiency and individual fun. Second, the alpha player isn't some evil villain, they're just a natural side effect of a game that only rewards efficiency. Third, designers can fight back with randomness, time limits, and hidden information to give power back to each player. And finally, and this is so important, mechanics are not enough. A game needs a strong sense of progression and a whole lot of charm to be something you want to come back to again and again.
Which brings us to our final thought, a question for you to take back to your own game nights. In any cooperative game, where does the search for the perfect strategy end, and where does your own personal fun begin? It's a question every player and every designer has to answer for themselves.